The last time we were on live like this, it was a red market. And when we pull up the charts, everywhere was just red. Now the market has reverted, and we're on another live again to show you what the market has done so far and likewise live. Now, I know you're there. Now, with a virtual round of applause, welcome, Mr. Kandem. Welcome to Clockwise.
Thank you.
It's such before in the market. Now, what is the state of the market currently?
Okay, I has started rather a bit red, but of course, like we also predicted that once earnings calls start trickling in, then we'll have a reversal in the market. And what has been very interesting in the market is that we have seen the outperformance of some names.
Yeah.
Some names have been laggards, have really outperformed. And importantly, we see some names that were left for dead, really. They have completely rebounded.
Yeah. Why are you laughing?
And you know the name I'm talking about, guys.
Okay,
I mean,
it's assets.
apparently, you guys know that. I mean, the last time we had the call, it was basically on the live, and we were literally taking a position here. It was at least 21.5.
And I remember I told you that access score cannot go down. It's already down.
So I remember I said something. I said that one of the reasons why I knew that I literally packed a lot of positions here was because I knew that from 20, if you look at them, I mean, the charts are here. If you look at this from 20, if you look at the 20 from 20 down to 22, you have a very strong demand zone. Very strong demand zone that I think actually held very strong over several weeks, really.
Yeah.
And I told you that the reason why this is the case is because the last offer price for Access, the last right issue for Access was at 20 naira. Yeah. So if it's at 20 naira, any investor, you would actually book a loss, a big one, if you sell below this. That's why I think on that show, if you remember, I actually said, I'm packing a lot of my limit orders between 20, you could remember, between 20 and 21. And I staged them every 5. So I had at 20, I had at 21.5, I had at 20, 21 and all of that, and all the way to 23. Okay. So which is, and we have seen the reversal. I said that the reason why Access Bank suffered this was the huge impairment loss. But I also told you that we had in FY 2025 we had 523 billion naira. Yeah. If you look at it in quarters, that should average out to 130 billion per quarter. But for the first quarter of 2020, 9 billion, which is a very good development. The same thing. So we had talked about even at 21.9, which if you are up at least 43%.
The reason why I'm giving you enough time because I know this is what you actually said.
Yeah, I mean, I want asset value.
Yes, and
52 trillion. 52 trillion naira.
You know, most people actually cannot differentiate between when a stock price is low and when the business is actually doing well. When the fundamentals are still strong. Yeah. They don't understand that, okay, this stock price is actually undervalued. So although I'm one of those actually called Access Bank a penny stock.
Yeah, you call it a penny stock.
I apologize.
But this was a dislocation. A very serious dislocation because nothing had changed in the fundamentals. That's why you see the price got into this very strong supply zone and it's now retracing. But I'll tell you something. I believe that this retracement, I mean, by the way, remember, Access has not reported yet. Yeah. So this retracement is not going to be, it's going to be short-lived, really. So this retracement will be short-lived, and what that means is that you are going to see a reversal where you are going to kick out this all-time highs of 36, and then we'll move on.
Let's go to the business of the day.
No, before we go to the business of the day, please.
Okay.
I have another name that I want to, which it also ties because I'm also going to share the reports that they just recently announced, which is
I guess First Bank.
That is First Bank.
I guess.
Because it's one of the names that I also channel talking about First Bank and making at the time that we were talking about First Bank, look at it was somewhere around 58. So you are looking at something that was trading around this. Trading around this figure. And I remember telling you that First Holdco was, I had seen, by the way, in first quarter, they had recovered 19 billion out of what they had already earmarked as impairment charge. That was a very huge prospect, and I mentioned on that live session, the results which are going to reflect very an outstanding result from First Holdco. Over 650 billion in profit before tax.
Okay.
Now, what that tells you is that First Holdco that's a complete turnaround for a name that was dealing with a lot of impairment charges, even.
Well, because I see you're
No. So from a name that actually is number one. But speaking technically, because I mean, names like this, you also look at technical. Look at this. This actually shows you a very strong. And I knew that once prices cannot really. By the way, you can see that this actually held. This is a range, a consolidation that held so much. Yeah. Speaking technically, which means that once you have, remember in technicals. The more the consolidation you have, yeah, the more the upswing when the price actually shoots, takes over the consolidation, shoots away from the consolidation. So that is one of the things, speaking technically. But the main reason we know why this has happened is because Femi Otedola has consolidated his position. He now owns 21.6% of First Holdco into the name. But the important thing is, if you have even followed the fundamentals, which we have been sharing on this channel, if you have also followed the technicals that we've been sharing, you should be in that name. That's why I was, even when it was, I think it came out down to about almost 53, and I was still calling the name.
And you're still making the buy.
What was the name of that video? I've forgotten the name of that video, but there was that video that we did, and we said we should do, and I bought it at this point. I remember how you said I was crazy to be buying First Holdco at the point where it was literally weekly, almost consistently red candles. But what I saw was a bank that has been seriously dislocated. First Holdco had gone as low as under 3 times earnings. TTM, that is 12 months earnings. Now, that is very cheap for me. The same thing applies to Access Bank, was like 1.6. Think about that for a second. That's the earnings price to PE ratio of a distressed bank.
That's why I call it penny stocks.
No, so here is the deal. I told you it's not a penny stock. One of the things we consider before we take this is, what is the price to earnings ratio? You need to know whether it's cheap. Do you know that at this point, even at 120.5, First Holdco is still trading at less than 5 times earnings. Less than 5 times earnings, which for me is still very cheap.
Okay.
I know it's very difficult to tell someone that the market has ripped like this is cheap. But the reality is that it's cheap. If you look at their earnings and then look at the price that we are seeing here, it is still trading at less than I think it's about 4.8 times earnings.
All right.
So this is First Holdco.
All right. Now let's look at those companies that have actually made their earnings calls and see if we can see opportunity. Now we've heard of First Holdco, we've heard of Airtel Africa, BUA. Yes.
BUA was also.
Now let's look at the analysis of their earnings calls, and let's see.
Okay, so like First Holdco reported an 83.5% increase. In also very interesting is that if you look at the first quarter, this quarter last year, you're looking at 109.67 billion. Okay. But we just had the pre-tax profit came up to 321 billion for the first quarter of 2026, which is about 95.2%. So what that tells you is that First Holdco has done insane. If you look at the price differential, 653.5. That's a whooping 83.5% gain, and that is why you saw. Because I mean, investors are very excited about what First Holdco has done. The point I'm interested is in the net interest income. You know, we've been operating in a high interest environment for some time now, and I remember I told you that banks are primed to win in high interest environment. The net interest income that we had was 879.13 billion. That's like, and then you had an interest income of 1.4 trillion. Then, of course, the operating profit was 652 billion, while the profit after tax came up to 526 billion, which is 81.57% higher than what we had in 2020, same time 2025, which was 289.77 billion. Interestingly, too, you also have a nearly doubled, earnings per share. So what we just had was 11.4 naira in terms of earnings per share, as against 6.84 naira last year. That is where I know that. I know that is where that's where you get tickled, because you know that something is coming for you. So when you look at a bank that did not even announce any payout in terms of dividend in the last quarter, you have a whooping 11.74%. So even if they decide to share just half, which is about 6 naira per share, that's a huge amount. That's a very huge amount compared to the fact that they did not give anything last time. Total assets is about 20.65 trillion, meaning that the bank is very, very liquid. 30.65 trillion, up from 27.25 trillion as at 31st of December 2025. So for me, this shows a company that is very robust. It shows the balance sheet is very, very strong.
Yeah. So are we expecting a sustained rally?
Of course, we're expecting a sustained rally. I believe that this is just for the first half of 2026. Yeah. I believe that by the time you look at year end, you should be looking at more than 20 naira per share in terms of
so if you're a first time investor, at what point will you actually come into this particular rally?
Okay, so speaking honestly, I would allow the market to simmer a little bit. I mean, the enthusiasm is still there in the market. First Holdco has really ripped. I mean, First Holdco, the investment I did at this point has netted me 126%.
So if you're not invested before, you're late already.
Yeah, but I mean, you could allow the market to simmer a little bit. I believe that, remember, First Holdco is the only name that has actually announced, the only name out of the Fugas that has actually announced their earnings. So I believe that as more companies announce, we will see a rotation, really. That's just the reality. We'll see a rotation. Some people have already booked massive profit. Like I told you, I'm already up 126% on this name. So I would rather trim some of my profits and have some dry powder to deploy. I did some part this morning. I had to deploy to another name. I don't know whether I should mention that name here, but I had to deploy to another name which has not been. If you look at, by the way, I can afford to mention that name, because if you look at this, look at that radical, look at this. Why did you say?
I know what you want to
do. So if you look at this name, it has not done anything at all. If you look at GTCO, look at, he has not participated in the rally whatsoever.
So they've not started.
But GTCO, you know that GTCO is such a name. You cannot discount GTCO in this way. So but if you ask me, I don't know what GTCO is still doing, selling at 132.
So that they're undervalued.
So I mean, it's undervalued. So I had to rotate a good chunk of the profits I made from First Holdco to GTCO, because I believe GTCO will also rally. They have not made any calls yet. I think the other name that has not made any calls yet is UBA. UBA have not made any calls. Even Access Card, they have not made any calls yet. So what I'm looking at is, I believe that people will still rotate from First Holdco to other Fugas as the earnings show up.
Okay. Let's look at Airtel Africa.
Yeah. So let's look at Airtel.
Move.
No, you know, interestingly, I know that we were mentioning a name that was very expensive, because at the time we were selling at
your questions on the comment section, and we're going to respond to it live.
So it was selling at, when we made that call, it was selling at 2,000, I think around 2,004 earnings that they dropped at the time, and that was very impressive. A phenomenal performer. into the right, really. So for me, million in the quarter ended in 2020, 30. That is, the way it works is June 30th, 2026 was 360 million. And then if you look at that in Nigeria, billion or thereabout, compared to 73 million in. For me,
okay,
yes. So I imagine what MTN would do. So I'm even looking at as MTN has not, it's not had that Airtel Africa just recorded. Yeah. But I think this is undervalued. I think MTN is still undervalued.
At this point, they're still undervalued.
It's still very, very much undervalued. By the way, MTN is just trading at about 12 times earnings. Yeah. If you look at its names are not even as big as MTN. They're doing 15, 16 times the second quarter result for MTN or half year result for MTN, which I believe I am into MTN when it was down below, I think percent to about 1 point, launching their mobile money operation in London Stock Exchange. So has its mobile money. Most of these telecom companies are their revenue source. So I think MTN, when you speak of Airtel Africa, you see MTN is a name that you could actually think of entering, because the reality is that by the time MTN reports some very crazy numbers, then you have these names rip, these charts rip, and could actually go beyond what you think of. Is a buy. Airtel Africa, actually, I would say this. I would be a little bit skeptical about putting everything to Airtel Africa at this point. Speaking technically, you have a ton of imbalances. You know what imbalances are in the market? Yeah.
The market will still come back.
Yeah. So I would still want this. Do you know what this chart is similar to which other chart? Remember? Aradel was like this.
Yes.
Aradel was like this. And then people were like, and I said something. I said, I'm not very sure that you want to enter at this point. I mean, I would still for Airtel Africa, I would still wait for some retracement. I've taken some profits off the table because at the end of the day you have to book your profits. So I've taken some profits off the table. I would still wait to see if there is any retracement, so I can get an opportunity to re-enter the market.
Now let's look at the last one, which is BUA Cement.
BUA Cement. So BUA Cement, incidentally, BUA Cement did a very got some people deep into the raid. We saw BUA Cement correct in a way that we have not seen in recent times. But do you know one of the reasons why I kept on saying that BUA Cement is not you can't ride over BUA Cement? Look at how it came down to. I know someone who literally was telling me that she had to install bamboo because she nearly lost her mind. So the thing is, BUA Cement actually corrected. So if you look at this, you realize that this was 440, and you have this. This was more than a 20% correction. So BUA was actually in a bear market territory. But the thing is, when you think about cement companies in Nigeria, can you mention them? There are three: Dangote,
Lafarge,
BUA, and Lafarge.
It depends on what you want. Lafarge, then BUA.
Dangote, BUA, and Lafarge. Yeah. So when that means that, and by the way, if you look at Dangote, you see how strong the name has been. I know Dangote has had a lot of interest in other African countries, and then you've seen the cost of the uptick in the price of real estate, especially houses, properties, and all of those things. Now, apart from that, if you observe, most roads now are being built with concrete. Not even the tar. It's actually concrete that is being used. So that represents a serious opportunity for cement companies. So I just did not understand why BUA what business bar had selling off like that. So for me, I thought it was a temporary dislocation, and that's why I couldn't enter BUA. You know, I wanted to enter BUA, but I will still enter though. I wanted to enter BUA when we got to this 280. But it turned out that because, you know, what I actually leave for what, the way I have my dry powder is in fixed income. So before I could rotate it out,
it came down.
It would not. But I still would enter BUA because I think BUA, if Dangote Cement can be this big, Dangote Cement, by the way, is the largest company in the world. I'm sorry, the largest company in the NGX. So if you add Lafarge and BUA together, it doesn't even get to Dangote. So Dangote Cement. So I think if Dangote could perform so well, BUA also has a good pricing power. So I believe BUA is suffering a temporary dislocation and will come back. Okay. I think would buy BUA.
As an analyst, what do you say the results are now? Are they good?
The results are good. And I had predicted the result to be good because if you look at innings, like they say, once the first quarter innings is good, except you have a major economic dislocation, then the second quarter will always follow suit. Okay. And then because some of the of a possibility of paying dividends, given the MTN, by the way, had actually declared interim dividends of 15 naira. So you can imagine, even if they do another 15 naira for the rest half of the year, that gives you 30 naira or at least 25 naira for investors. So for me, I think the market is looking up. The only thing, and what are the headwinds or the tailwinds that I'm seeing for this market? Remember that Dangote is coming in. And what I want you to understand listing is that Dangote is coming in with about 50 billion. Dangote will represent about 50 billion. And that added to the NGX would be like 43% of the current value of the NGX. So there's a concentration risk, because when a particular one company share of the NGX, then that means the NGX, any shift or any dislocation in that company can target. That's on the negative side. But on the positive side, it will now make at that time the NGX will be over 200 over 200 I think at least almost 200 billion dollars. If that happens, there are some investors, there are institutional investors, there are some ETFs that will begin to be interested in the Nigerian exchange group.
And that will make more liquidity.
That will create, when you have international players coming in, that will create more liquidity. The next thing is, we've seen the debacle, the T+1 settlement debacle that we've had. But I see this ACC is doing a lot of work to ensure that they work out all the to make that not a reality, because, like I said, FTSE Russell is not interested in funding. So, however, you are going to work out the system such that they can place a trade and settle that trade within 1 day, you have to do it. But I think if what the ACC is working on works, then you might have the FTSE Russell readmit Nigeria into the frontier of market index. You know what that means? It means that funds that are tracking the frontier market, the FTSE Russell frontier market index, will have to admit some of the names on the NGX. That's not all. Even S&P Global pushed Nigeria from B- to B+. That is also, and then we are also on the watch list, meaning that investors, international portfolio investors are taking note. Sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, global institutional investors are taking note and might want to allocate to the Nigerian market. So these are all tailwinds. The only challenge I foresaw, but for me, I thought they had been priced in, and maybe most likely from what I'm seeing, they must have been priced in, was the issue of the holdcos. Where I thought, okay, if the CBN goes through with the holdcos, then there might be a need. I think the last report we saw was that Access Bank, 600 billion naira from the public market, or maybe through a right issue, to be able to meet margin for the whole cruise.
Existing investors.
So I mean, of course, how does that happen? Is you offer, if you are offering shares to the public, you have to come at a discount price, and that will push down the stock price itself. So, but I think these are some headwinds. I believe the tailwinds that we have are way more than the headwinds that we have. And so, if you ask me, apart from the other thing which I have, which is the inflation. Inflation for me is a challenge because you've seen what has happened. Hostilities have resumed. If you look at, just look at the Brent. Let's look at Brent and see how what it is trading at this point. So if you look at Brent, you realize. So look at that. Brent is now back above 90. So when Brent is at this point, the chances of a lower fuel price is actually diminished. What that means is that
affecting everything.
I mean, Nigeria is a fuel-based economy. So what that means is that you are most likely going to see inflation remain stubbornly high. It contracted a little bit by 3 basis points from 15.93 to 15.91 for the month of June. But the point is, if inflation remains stubbornly high, the chances of the CBN or the MPC lowering rates is almost pale to insignificance. And if that is the case, that means the fixed income market will remain very attractive. And that affects equity market. So that's my biggest fear at this point. And the CBN at the last MPC meeting, even though there was no rate move, but the tone of the CBN governor was, you could see that hawkish tone, from the CBN governor. So and then if you also look at the debt market, look at the debt market of subscription, and they only offered what 900 and something billion. So that contrarian thing is that when the price goes high, rates go down for the fixed income market, and I've already seen it. I think it's gone down below 17% now. So if that is the case, if that can remain, then because we need the fixed income market to be more unattractive for investors to rotate into the equity market, and that will favor us.
I think you've done justice. You've done justice to today's conversation, and we are still looking at more companies publishing their earnings, and we'll still do more analysis. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming. Now, on that note, we'll come to the end of today's episode of Clockwise Live. Now, do not forget to like, subscribe, and also put on the notification bell on this channel because of the amazing content we bring. Now, this is Clockwise, and we tell you there is always a bull market everywhere, and we are here to help you find. My name is Providence, and I'll see you again.